JJ, here we are, the Rugby Breakdown podcast.
Here we are.
We've got an amazing few weeks coming up, of course. Inter Service Rugby, so much to talk about and unpick as the sides get ready for amazing showdowns at some incredible venues as well. And it's not just the players and the fans getting excited, but I tell you what, you've been raring to go yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an amazing sort of process so far. The build-up, sort of like the road to the Inter Service Championships has already been like, you can feel like a little bit of a fever pitch building this year. Bigger, it gets bigger every year. It literally gets bigger every year. So this year was the first official launch event, which was held at Twickenham Stadium, which obviously
you went to?
Yes, which I went to, which obviously will be hosting the Army-Navy game, which has done for many years now.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was over 50,000 last year.
Well over, yeah.
Yeah, and potentially more this year. But yeah, so with the launch event, there was so much going on, but you can tell the level of professionalism has gone up. Sort of, we got in there, we were given our brochures, told where to go, and obviously given a nice lunch. You know, that's
what else would you expect?
That's always the first thing you look for, the perk. So
here first.
Yeah, and then all their trophies were on display. There's a lot of silverware up for grabs. You kind of forget, obviously, with both the men's and women's competitions, the overall competition, and obviously the Babcock Trophy. There's a lot on the line.
How can you put into words, for those who might not have come across it before, never mind those who haven't been to the event, the games, to the grounds, but even those who maybe haven't seen it before, how do you put into words just how big it is?
It's I think you can only put it as simply as this is the biggest military sporting event in the UK. I would hazard to say it's the biggest military sporting event in Europe, and the only thing that will come close or even compare is the American football in the US, and even then I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure it does. It's something quite...
Huge statement, that. Yeah. That's big call.
Yeah, it's quite spine tingling, to be fair, at times. But yeah, you can tell by the launch event they're building a new era for the competition. I think there'll be even big announcements after this competition as well. So 2025 is already looking bigger in 2024.
You're putting it up here. You're building that, raising that standard even more every time.
But it was a nice day at the launch event. Well, I say it was a nice day. It was a horrible day at the launch event because it was so cold. Wind, raining sideways, and bless the players. So there was a few players from each team that set up. So they were doing all the photo calls through the tunnel, but they were just there in their short in kit, full kit. And it was so freezing just seeing them in their skin tight shirts
and no warm ups. They're used to obviously getting themselves
warm ups. Yeah, it's not like it's not like a normal match day. You got the adrenaline pumping through you. You've done your warm ups. No. It's just raining sideways, and bless them, we're just holding them there in the freezing cold stands, asking them questions.
Very obliging. They were very good to you on the day, weren't they?
Well, they were very obliging, but there was one thing I did notice, and that was with the Navy girls, like the Navy women. I really, really thought they've got a little something about them this year. Like, just talking to them, there's a little bit of speaking off camera, a little bit of they don't want to come to Twickenham this year and treat it like a nice day. They're there to play, and I feel like they've got something to prove from last year, and you felt that the eye of the tiger. That's what they got. They got the eye of the tiger.
Absolutely, and they feel it, of course, at these events, the launch events. They get to Twickenham, they get to these incredible spiritual homes of the sport, and they can sense. You know, they think, wow, if I were able to run out here for my service, which, of course, as we say, means a huge, huge amount to them, to the fans, to their service comrades as well. I mean, what an opportunity that is for them to do something very special.
Yeah, well, that's one of the pieces of content that I recorded with them was what does the badge mean to them, and some of the answers are like extremely profound, and they was like saying to me that it's sort of representing your country to represent your service, and
that's the level we're talking about. I mean, that's
yeah, and
right
that literally these people are willing to put their bodies on the line and run through brick walls. And I know, like, I'm
not trying to stop.
Well, yeah, it's the thing.
Yeah.
We say these kind of things as amateur rugby players that we're going to do, but there is still that element of, you know, I think you slightly hold back. There is going to be no holding back in these games. No holding back, no holds barred. And yeah, you can tell, as I say, every year gets bigger and bigger, and they want it more and more.
Well, you bumped into someone very special, of course, at the launch event. Not just the players and the captains, as special as they are, but of course, a legend of English rugby.
Well, yeah, I mean, a legend of world rugby, really. Like,
a legend of rugby.
Yeah,
full
so
stop.
yeah, 100%. So as part of the UK Armed Forces Rugby Ambassador role, Jason Robinson was at the launch event.
So good.
Yeah, and I managed to speak to him about essentially what he thought of the athletes involved, and because when he started rugby, he was in the fortunate position of being a professional, always got paid. He started in rugby league, professional, went to rugby union, when rugby union went professional.
Yes.
So he's never known what it's like to do a job and to play top level sport. Mm-hmm. And he was just mesmerised by the players and what they do and how good they are and how good the standards are.
And you were mesmerised as a rugby man yourself. Were you getting itching? Were you itching to get on the pitch? Were you thinking, I'd love to be lining out here?
You know, I don't think Twickenham really wants to see one of my lineouts. One of the worst, not straight lineouts you'll see. Even though I'll say at amateur rugby it gets pinged more than it does at that level. But it was. I tell you what though, I was just fanboying being next to Jason Robinson. To be honest.
It's a dream, isn't it?
It was just like, you know Kevin and Perry, like when like,
I love the sort of sideways turn we've taken.
But it was like, hi, Mr. Robinson. Yes, Mr. Robinson.
I need to listen back to the raw recordings of this to hear how much your voice was like that.
You don't. There was so much stuttering and stammering. Oh my God! But it was an amazing moment, and to have someone like that on board, as someone who epitomises rugby, to have them as an ambassador for them to talk about the competitors that are involved in the Inter Service Championship, it just shows the level that we're at.
It's incredible. One of the things that amazes me, I must say, JJ, is the fact that obviously we mentioned the excitement the players have lining out in front of 50,000 plus people, for example, Twickenham. But the excitement they have, of course, for representing their service, but the composure is immense. You know, you've got players who've been building up for weeks, granted, they've been together as a squad, they've been playing some warm-up matches as well, which help them try and gain some momentum, but the way that they're able to keep it all together, you know, it's one game at a time in the Inter Services, so you know, they're going out there and laying it all on the line, but to keep it all together for 80 minutes in such a high pressure environment, it's just wonderful.
It really is. It's going to be such an interesting tournament this year. If we look back to it with the Navy winning the overall competition last year.
Yeah.
But they drew with the RAF in the first game in the men's competition.
In a mud bath game.
Yes.
The pitch just looked brown by the end of it, didn't it?
It did. And then obviously the Navy go out and beat the Army. It shows that I think the men's competition is going to be pretty tight this year.
How did the Navy, as you say, with their amazing win last year at Twickenham and an incredible performance, some of the tries were phenomenal, which you can still see, of course, on our website and socials, but how do they, because they hadn't won it for so many years, how do they play with that, not that favourites tag, but that defending champions tag? not maybe some people have them as favourites, but you know what I mean. How do they go out and make sure that they have a slightly different mindset this time? The Army obviously are chomping at the bit.
I think you were speaking about it before when you used the word composure.
Yeah,
and I do think I do think they're going to need that composure, but being winners, coming as reigning defending champions, this is the stuff that they wanted. They haven't won the competition since 2016. They are now the champions. This is what they wanted. They're the ones with the targets on their back, and believe me, they'll relish it. But you've been seeing like a lot of the build-up games in terms of what you see going into the competition, sort of the themes.
Well, you mentioned the build-up, and they have been able to get some of the warm-up games played. They haven't. I think their build-up, if you like, over the last 8-9 weeks has been a little truncated because of the weather. And we can't just blame the weather, obviously, for high-performance rugby, but it hasn't helped. It's been cold. It's been very wet. Justin Coleman, the RAF head coach, and you can check out this piece, of course, on the website in our previews, was saying that hopefully it's going to be a better day than it was last year. But in the build-up, some of the training has been has been really hindered with waterlogged pitches and things like that. So that hasn't helped. However, both sides have been able to get some momentum with wins in their final warm-up games ahead of this weekend at Plymouth. So the Royal Navy men beat Devonport Services in their final warm-up match 36-14, fairly comfortable win there. The RAF, there's an emphatic win that they got, 43-21, when they won in Reading. And a player I want to touch on there is the RAF's Kieran Prescott, who scored not 1, 2, 3, but 4 tries in that performance, and he's coming in red hot form. He hasn't scored an inter-service try yet, so he's been talking to our BFBS sport editor John Knighton and saying, I really want to get obviously that try. I want to come out and play and show what I've got. But he's been in scintillating form. 4 tries in that match, that warm-up match, and I think 10 this season. I mean, it just reminds us of how good that quality is. Yeah,
and it's so important to come in with form. Yep. Like it cannot be underestimated if you're feeling cold before the tournament begins, because it's full tilt from the start, and the level of intensity just from being service against service, it rises. It is sort of the equivalent of going from a club game to a country game, to an international game. That's sort of the rise in terms of that comparison level.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned, of course, the Royal Navy women, and they're chomping at the bit, really, to come out here and make a statement. Interesting for the RAF women, because Amy Cockayne, England's star, got a red card at the weekend, so she'll not be able to play this weekend. So that's a bit of a blow for the Royal Air Force women. And Sarah Bonner, Scotland international, another star, of course, as we're accustomed to seeing for the RAF, injured as well. So how will they be able to balance the side without those 2 stars? It's going to be an interesting one there. And for Amy Cockayne, she's so experienced, but it must be bitterly disappointing to be out of action this weekend.
I mean, anytime you meet Amy, you know she's a competitor.
She's great.
Yeah, I mean, she's great value for everything, but she's competitor. She wants to play in absolutely everything, whether that be for England, whether it be for Leicester, or whether it be for the RAF. She'll be gutted, absolutely gutted. She's missing this one, but as you say, like this is set up for the Navy women. They're like.
Great opportunity.
This is the opportunity knocks. The door's a little bit ajar for them. It's just whether they're gonna open it up. But I mean, they have to come out hard from the start. I mean, but you could just tell by talking to them, Navy women, how much they want it this year. Like, they don't want to be also-rans. They want to truly be, going for this competition. And I can't call it. I cannot call this game.
It's tough.
It is tough.
It really is. We're not making excuses here.
I've got splinters sitting on that fence, like literally splinters. I can't. I'm struggling to call which way that goes, but probably we have to call it at some point.
Call at some point.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know at the moment which way I'd go on that.
Very tricky. I tell you one thing I love. Another thing I love is the stories that you've been hearing. You were along at the launch, and we know how competitive all of these athletes are, but I tell you what, there's some characters in there too.
Yeah, if you haven't had the chance, check out our teammates video on the Forces News socials. So essentially, I've asked various people who were at the launch event, like who was the best dressed, who's the worst singer, who's the worst trainer. I mean, yeah. And to go back to great value on Amy Cockayne, she won both the best. She got voted both best dressed and worst dressed.
How on earth do you manage that?
Well, essentially, she's. I think her unique fashion sense divides opinion, and as you know, like
it's JJ the diplomat.
no. Her granddad slippers, as they were called. appear
so-called granddad slippers.
Yeah, whether they're stylish or just comfort, like they divide opinion. But however, yeah, she's certainly rocking it.
She's rocking it. It's brilliant though, isn't it? And that's one of the nice things I think about it, as well as the camaraderie that we're able to sample a little bit of. And after the game, you know, all of these players put their bodies on the line, and they all get on so well. Especially, of course, inter-service, but when it comes to just having a catch up with your opponents after the match, it's special.
Yeah, it is special, and you could tell this is very important when it comes to rugby, that whole bond, because you are not only just putting your body on the line for yourself, you're putting your body on the line for each other, and you've got to have that trust and that support for each other. But you could tell from those conversations, and they loved just dropping each other in it, you could tell from those conversations, as big as this competition's getting, and the athleticism getting to this next level professionalism, and we can talk about the standards of where we think these men and women fit in.
Yeah.
But that amateur club vibe is still there, and that is so important.
It's key.
And that's what rugby is in a nutshell. And that's why I think rugby in the military just goes hand in hand. There is that toughness, that physicality, that trust in each other, but then there's also that friendship, that kinship, like that bond that you'll have for the rest of your life. And that's why I do think the two are just a marriage made in heaven.
One of the credits I think to give this competition is the fact that non-military rugby lovers, people with no connections necessarily to the military or any of these players for that matter, want to come along and watch as well, or maybe watch with us live, of course. Check out our socials and check out our website for all the coverage. And I think that's a credit to the competition, but I tell you what, it must be also credit to that atmosphere, as you say, with the players, the way that they have that bond, that camaraderie. You go along to the games, you can see just how much of that there is, and amongst the fans too.
Yeah, I think as rugby lovers, we talk about respect a lot, and I think there's a lot of respect from rugby lovers to the military community as a whole. But I think that there's that rugby community that comes together, that Rugby United, as it's called,
yes,
that supports these competitions, and that's why you see tens of thousands come to Twickenham every year. It's not just the military community; it is the rugby community as a whole.
Yeah,
and you'll go there and you'll see Quinn shirts, you'll see Sarri shirts, you'll see Leicester shirts, you see Saints shirts. You might see a couple of Ulster shirts.
You may do, yeah. There's very loyal fans, yes, indeed. But that's one of the reasons it's so important, isn't it, to spread it around. We of course go into this weekend in Plymouth, and we're going up to Twickenham, and of course Kingsholm and Gloucester for the final set of matches. That is brilliant. That is what rugby has always done and needs to do to spread it around the various rugby communities in the country. Yeah,
the fact that it's so far spread, and you know there's a community in each place that can come and see these games, and it's so interesting, the three so diverse stadia that we'll be at. So in Plymouth, it's a little bit of that kind of for want of a better word, that amateur vibe, but I mean it's still a lovely setup. I mean it's better.
Brickfield Stadium,
yeah. I mean it's still better than dare I say our Fularian setup, even though we have a very good setup too. But
shout out,
yeah, shout out. But it is, and then you got a Premiership stadium, and then you've got the home of England rugby. They're very diverse places. Hence why last year there was the essentially the mud bath of Brickfield Stadium, which made for a very tight game.
Another thing I want to touch on, and something that you and I both saw and enjoyed last year, was the incredible array of fancy dress. And some say, JJ, that we perhaps let the side down. We didn't. I mean, God forbid anyone saw us in some of those cheerleader outfits or anything like that. Thankfully, on our socials when we had some of those video clips, people's eyes were saved. But no, I think that's incredible as well. It just adds to the sense of fun, doesn't it? Are we going to see lots this weekend in Plymouth?
I think there's a good chance. Like there is always part of that. Plymouth. Plymouth's a wonderful place with full of characters and wonderful people. So I think there's a very good chance you'll see people in fancy dress. But even if you don't see them in fancy dress, you're going to hear them in good voice. And that's the wonderful thing about that venue. It's like the other venues, you might hear loud crowd chants, but you'll hear individual voices. So if a player's not doing exactly up to the grade, someone in the crowd's going to let them know, and totally. You'll hear that. They'll taunt you. They'll let you know so that's the interesting thing. You'll hear those individual voices where, obviously in Twickenham you're going to hear a cacophony of noise, and Kingsholm's always a fun place too. But I think that's wonderful that it's so diverse, but it's going to make for a very interesting first game. And I think that's probably a nice segue to the predictions of what you reckon what's going to happen this weekend.
Well, Mr. Fence Sitter, I think coming from a fellow fence sitter, I can throw that out there. I think that we're going to see. I think there could be a surprise in store in the men's, but I want to say a surprise in terms of the RAF pipping the Royal Navy, the defending champions, to the post. Maybe Mr. Kieran Prescott to get another few tries. I think the Navy men will just do it. I think. Don't ask me for a score prediction. And I think the Navy women. I'm not sure. I think the RAF women. Maybe if there's a couple of absences, I don't know. It'll be. It's tough on the call. See what I'm doing here? I'm trying to emulate you.
Yeah,
I'm
you are emulating me, and you've literally stolen my.
I've totally failed.
You've literally stolen my predictions. Literally stolen them.
Word for word. I nicked your notes this morning.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think very much the same. I think it's going to be I think it's a tough start. For the Navy as reigning champions. It was a close game last year. I think it very much conditions may come into play in this game.
Could do. Please, a bit of sunshine, please. A bit of running rugby, come on. I mean, we want a bit of that, don't we? I know you're a loyal forward. Myself being a former, and very much a former back, if you to look at me. But yes, I think the fact is, no matter where you play in the pitch, you want a nice game of rugby.
We want a bit of jouet, a little bit of flair, some handling skills.
Yeah.
I mean, I still want to see a little bit of grunt. You can't beat a little bit of forward power. But on the whole, I want to see hands flowing. But I do think it'll come into play dependent on what conditions are on the day. I probably think it's going to be a close game again. If it's another mud bath, I am leaning towards. Though I think the Navy men are going to do it. I really do. So I'm going with the Navy men. And as for the women's game, as I say, looking into the eyes of those Navy women's players, they want it. They really do. And I think this is the opportunity for them. When key players missing for the RAF, so I'm going for the Navy women, which is exactly the same as what you want for.
We'll hold each other to that.
That's
what you want, though, isn't it? That's what you want in terms, certainly for the men as defending champions, just to get stuck in and not have a week. Maybe they would want a week just to have a bit of a look at their two opponents in the competition, but I think to get stuck in as defending champions and to try and lay down that early marker to the Army as well as the RAF.
This is why it's such one of the great comparisons is the Six Nations. Honest to God, it's such a great comparison because you go straight in and it doesn't matter who you play. Like, this is full throttle. This is different. This is different to the warm-up games. This is they want it so much more to beat each other. It's pride on the line, you know. And there's nothing more than pride.
That's it. And in recent years, I mean, look how close a lot of the games have been. Never mind some of the upsets we've seen, the resurgence of Italy. You know, other teams, teams in the last few years have gone into it with high hopes and then have kind of found themselves unstuck a little bit in the middle, or have picked it up, like we saw, for example, with England this time around. So it's as you say, it's just that level of high intensity, and how exciting for the players that we're discussing it in these terms, talking about it being they're like internationals. And some of those teams, I mean, we had a chat before about how some of these teams could be playing in the Championship, maybe even in the Women's Premier. You know, that's the level we're talking about, right?
That is literally the level we're talking about. I think all of those men's teams would be very competitive at the Championship level. I mean, and players that have appeared for those for the services have been international rugby players, you know, and if we're going to talk about the importance of the competition, we have to bring up Sam Matavesi from last year, like
the Fiji international, Royal Navy star.
Yes, but he didn't play in a semi-final Premiership playoff. He played in the Inter Services.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just that shows you how much it means.
Yeah,
that is it in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, that shows you what this competition means to those men and women. Like, it is so important, and I think it could be hard to grasp for perhaps people outside of services, but I honestly, these people, what it means to be with their, essentially, you know, what they see as their brothers and sisters, like, they won't miss it for the world.
No, and for all of us to be able to see not just the games, but the build-up to the games. Firstly, we'll take the build-up and some of those interviews with players, some of the cool social media things. You know, as Mr. Social Media Extraordinaire, what are some of the things we can look out for? Forces.net website, you know, on socials, BFBS
I mean,
as well.
There's loads of fantastic articles going up on the website as we speak in terms of the build-up, and we've been there's been lots of chat with coaches and players. So pretty much every day you'll see an article, and we'll be seeing the reviews of the game as they happen. In terms of social media, look, there's already been a nice couple of videos go up as say the what the badges mean to you, the teammate. There's been a clip of Jason Robinson, but we've got more to come from him from speaking to him at the launch event. We will be doing social videos during the match at Plymouth, really talking to people amongst the crowd, getting the atmosphere of what's going on. Yeah, so there'll be lots of fun, interesting things going on as we really speak to people, and it's also the reason why this competition is so big is because the supporters. Like, this is such a well-supported competition, and as I say, when we went to Twickenham last year, some of the amazing characters and the amazing fancy dress, you'll be able to see them all, or if you know people in your squadron, your regiment, you keep an eye on our socials. You might find them or find yourselves. Just let us know what you're wearing. Yeah, let us know what you're wearing, and we'll be there. We will be there. We're literally covering every little bit of it, and every game will be live on the Forces News YouTube channel.
Absolutely. It's very exciting. And you mentioned there, of course, people being able to, we can all interact with what's going on, leave comments on the live feed, you know, Forces News YouTube channel as the game's going on, say where you're watching from. We can all enjoy it from different places. And that build-up, for example, this weekend, we've got each of the four teams, the two men's, two women's teams, and how they've been building up, how they're feeling ahead of the game, just to whet the appetite, really. And if you want some hair-raising feeling, if you want that sort of feeling of adrenaline before the match gets here, watch the promo, of course, the promotional video that we have on forces.net on the website, in our articles as we're building up to the game, the two games. It's absolutely fantastic, and it zooms in on you're mentioning the badges. It zooms in on the badges, and you just feel it's wow. That's how much it's special. And you see the players lining up, and it has that camera shot as it kind of goes past the captains. That's amazing. That stuff.
Yeah, it is literally spine tingling stuff. Like it's getting me going already. It's getting me going. I'm getting hyped. So I'm getting hyped.
You need some fresh air, don't you? Yeah. He's getting all excited. Have we got a rugby ball near?
Yeah. I want to play a game.
Yeah.
Not in their particular games, but I want to play a game. Like, because I will get crushed. And that was the other thing, like from meeting the players.
You're looking up quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a fairly fit 15 and a half stone man.
There you go.
Yeah, and I'm a reasonable height, 5'11". I tell you what, yeah, I felt dwarfed and I felt fat, like it's just and they're pinnacle athletes, both the men and the women. They are lean, mean, and ready to go. Like there's not like a speck of fat on them. Like they are, you can imagine, like their BMI indexes and all that kind of stuff. They are fit.
Well, it's one of the reasons it's such a privilege for us, of course, to cover the events, the different matches, all 6 games, Forces News YouTube channel live with us, all the social media content, as you mentioned, in the build-up, during the games, after the games, as reviews, as we look ahead to the next games, and it's all there. Also, forces.net, the website. You can see the reports, match reports, the articles, interviews with players and coaches. So, it's brilliant. We're excited for everyone to join us, aren't we, for the coverage?
We are. We've got one last thing, though.
Yes, we have.
Yeah,
Don't forget it.
I know. We need to do our tournament prediction.
Oh, well, I mean, are you going to continue on the fence? I mean, are you going to try and jump off and get to A&E for those splinters?
No. I might go first this time.
All right, you go first. Yeah,
I'll go first this time. So, as I say, I do expect the Navy women to be a lot more competitive this year. Mm-hmm. They speaking to them, they want to go. They're raring to go. However, I still think that Army women's team is too strong, and if we're talking levels, that Army women's team could play in the women's premiership. There is no doubt about that.
I'd agree with you there.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. They're well drilled. They're full of fantastic individuals, but as a team, like if you watched their games from last year, and we talk about Jouet, like their handling's so good. They're just a joy to watch, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'll be going for the Army women.
Okay.
The men.
Slightly more difficult to call.
A little bit more difficult.
Tiny bit, maybe.
A little bit more difficult to call. But I am going to go with the Navy to repeat. And the reason for that is momentum's a big thing, and I think it was a huge weight off their shoulder to get that first win since 2016, and once you get that, it builds your confidence back up, and we've seen it in other sports as well. Once people get that tournament win, you see it with golf, or whether you see it with football, they just need that one big win, and they keep on going, and I can certainly could foresee that for the Royal Navy men. So I'm going for the women, the Army, and for the men, I'm going Navy.
That's a fair call. I'm going to be slightly different. I think with the women, I agree with you. I think the Army women are going to do it. I think, and watching them last year was such a brilliant thing, and the Navy, as you've said before, when you met them at the launch event, the Navy women are not there to no one's there to mess around, and they've got that extra sort of factor this year, I think. But I'm going to go with the Army for the women. For the men, I'm going to go with the Army, actually, because I think, they've been used to winning the competition for quite some time, and I think that hurt that they'll have been feeling last year. I just think it'll give them an extra edge, extra bit of motivation, and stepping into it this year, that determination to knock the Navy off their perch, as defending champions and grab that title back, I think it'll be huge. But also, and one of the special things, I guess, being only a tournament of 3 games for each, the men and women, is that if the RAF put in a bold statement this weekend to beat the defending champions, if they were to do that, then the pressure on both, obviously the Navy, but the Army as well at Twickenham in the second game will be monstrous. Because the RAF will know, well, we've got to then take on the Army at Kingsholm and Gloucester in the final round of matches with a win under our belts, and how that would be. Wow.
I think that's a good shout. I mean, the RAF are no mugs. As I say, they drew with the Navy last year. As you were saying, they've had a decent build up to the competition. They are a team to look out for.
Yeah.
Like, they can certainly give somebody a bloody nose, and maybe more.
They could.
Yeah, I think so. It's
small margins, which is what
yeah.
Really
that's
good.
why I think it's harder to call the men's competition than the women's competition. I mean, I think the key loss of players for that first game for the RF women probably means that, in my opinion, maybe behind the 8 ball before they begin, and obviously win a tournament of 3 teams. That's game over. You've got to be on it from the start.
You can't afford to slip up.
No.
And we'll be, as we say, there for every single minute of it. We'll be there
every
covering
kick, every try, every tackle, every ruck, every maul, every line out. We will be live.
You could be a bit more excited about it, for goodness sake. It's like, but we're going to be live for it all, and we're going to be, as you've mentioned, on socials, on our website at forces.net. We're excited for everyone to be joining us. We just cannot wait. I mean, you've seen the excitement in this man here. It's brilliant.
Yeah, just follow us on Forces News socials and also BFBS Sport, and we'll be keeping you up to date with every little bit of it.
Absolutely. We'll join you there.